Do you feel that, I'm just taking this back to my own school experience, which we all know was utterly miserable. Um, do you feel that by offering them an environment which is not a performance or rated environment, where at some point they have the test and the paper to write and all of that, that they have a higher absorption rate?
I would hope so. I mean, I think some people do. You're going to have some people that, no matter how you approach them, their retention rate or their growth is going to be limited, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I think that it's, what can you test people on, really? You know, you can test them on facts, you can test them on formulas, you can test them on. One of my greatest classes was theater history with Oscar Brockett. And anybody who knows theater history knows Oscar Brockett is the god of theater history. I mean, he's written every textbook in the world, basically, on theater history. And the first day of class, a graduate seminar in theater in the 20th century, right? And this young lady raised her hand and she said, Dr. Brockett, how many dates do we have to remember? And he went, oh my God, none. That's why I wrote the book. I never wanted to have to remember the dates. Look them up in the book, right? And I thought, this is true. You can say to people, you have to learn these dates. And yeah, they'll probably, for 50% of them will get better than average at remembering them and get an A or a B or a C.
Well, will they remember them past the day of the test?
Exactly. That's the problem, though. The day after the test, do they remember it? I'm not sure they do. I never did.
I know in my own experience that at that point in the game, you start concentrating on passing the test.
Exactly.
As opposed to learning the information that is. From my own high school experience, the classes that I was most proficient at were the ones such as, I'll name one, history was one I was very good at, for the simple reason that I had a very inspiring teacher who would just tell these fantastic stories, and who, as you pointed out, didn't care much about about the dates. But all I had to do there was sit and listen to these stories that were that drew me in. And I took a couple of notes on it. When it came time to reading the test, to doing the test or learning from the test, I didn't really have to learn anything anymore because I had spent my time absorbing, as opposed to spending my time worrying about what is it that I need to remember that that he's going to question me on, and then spending 3 nights banging that all in your head so that you can then pass the test, so that then you can hit the delete button because you need other space in those files in your brain to pass the next test.
And in our world, it's hard to even when I teach within a formal university situation, trying to figure out how to test people, I've never been able to do it, right? I've just never been able to do it. So I try to look at participation, I try to look at some things. Obviously, if we're doing a rendering class, you can judge the rendering, but more likely, I would hope, you judge the growth of their rendering technique, not the technique itself, because everybody's, some of the best designers, Joseph Swoboda and Ladislav Vikidil, were terrible draftspersons. They could barely, sketch. And then they turned it over to someone else who turned it into a rendering, or they turned it or to a model, right? Where Ladislav had, 2 model makers, and he would do the first initial sketches and hand it to him, and they'd do this model, and he'd take a photograph of the model and sometimes color it in, right, as a rendering, right? So, you can't even grade people based on that. And design is subjective on one hand. It totally cannot be objective. It cannot be objective. It must be based on whatever the idea or the concept or the passion of the moment of that play is. And so I don't know how to grade people, and I never have known how to grade people, right? Which has always been a problem with me, because when I taught at
that's where you get into an argument with the bureaucracy you so well mentioned.
When I taught at UC Santa Barbara, it was required that they do a final exam, and the final exam had to go into the office and be put in a file, right? And so I would make up these, final exams, and I'd give them to these people, and then I'd give them all A's, and then I'd get shit from the administration because I was giving too many A's, right? And I would ask for my classes to be pass-fail. No, this class can be pass-fail, and this one, but these other 3 have to have a letter grade assigned. Come on. Not really. Doesn't really need it. Right? So I don't know. I never fit the regular mold at any point. When I went to the University of Iowa,
Few people in our industry do.
I know. Well, few people who are successful, right? When I graduated from, I have a bachelor's degree from the University of Iowa. I have an associate's degree from Foothill Junior College, a bachelor's degree from University of Iowa, a master's degree from San Jose State, and a Master of Fine Arts, 4 friggin' degrees, from Indiana University, right? And I look back and I go, you know what? I learned a lot in junior college. Why did I learn a lot in junior college? Because very quickly I got hired to be a, quote, student staff member in the theater. And the theater did everything from Bill Cosby, Glenn Yarbrough, the Vienna Boys Choir, the Boston Pops Orchestra, the Hartford Ballet came to this school, right? And as a staff member, and since I gravitated to lights very quickly, I became kind of the lighting person. So, you know, the TD, who was a faculty member, would basically hand me the writer and say, here's what they need, you know. I'm not coming tomorrow night because, you know, I'd rather stay home with my wife and daughter. And so I experienced all these things. I experienced the jackasses that would come in and say, you know, this is all wrong, you know, I wanted this color there, and I wanted that there, and blah, blah, blah. And one of my funniest favorite stories is, and I try to teach by stories, I absolutely do, was Glenn Yarbrough came in, and Bill Cosby was his warm-up act. This is before Bill was known anywhere. He was the warm-up act. And we're standing in the middle of the apron, and over top of the apron, there were 8 pairs of apron lights that were just down lights. They were Fresnels, down lights, right? And so we're standing out there, and Glenn Yarbrough and his agent or his manager come up, right? And Glenn is just standing there. He's, you know, too important to talk to me because I was just a whippersnapper student, right? So his manager is asking me all these questions. Well, you know, what about this? Can that light be refocused down here? And I'm going, oh yeah, right. And I'm making all these notes, and I look over at the edge of the apron, and there's Bill Cosby leaning on the apron like this, right? And when he sees that I see him, he makes his face, right? And I'm trying not to laugh because Yarbrough and his manager can't see Cosby, but I can, right? And every time Yarbrough or Yarbrough's manager asks something else, Cosby, with his great faces, makes these faces, right? Rolls his eyes and does this, right? And finally, he walks out to the window because I mean the guy's being a jerk, right? And, you know, treating me like I know nothing, right? And Bill Cosby comes out and he says, "Glenn, can I go ahead? It would be all right if I, you know, oh yeah, go ahead." So he said to me, he said, "Those lights up there, are they controllable individually?" And I said, "No, they're controllable in pairs." Wow. So those two can be on and not the others? I said, "Yeah." Or those two and those two? I said, "Yeah." Or just those two? I said, "Yeah." He said, "Tell you what, what's your name?" I said, "Don." He said, "Don, when I come on stage, you turn them all on, and when I leave, you turn them all off," right? And I lost it. I totally lost it, right? But the thing of experience and that kind of, you know, first of all, what Yarbrough's manager was doing and being a dipshit about it, and then him putting it in a total perspective, right? Just almost immediately putting it in total perspective. And working with the Hartford Ballet, it comes in, you know, and the choreographer, the head, whatever, was a total jerk. But the stage manager was perfect, you know, the mellow, perfect person. Anyway.